And it can create a lot of challenges as well. Giftedness is not a pretty package with a bow on it all the time. There's a lot of emotional intensity, depth of thinking, deep thinking, existential questions, even at a young age, questioning meaning and purpose and belonging. And then there can be some challenges to relate to other people because not everybody thinks and talks in the same way. And that's fine. That's part of the neurodiversity landscape that I think we're all coming to understand a lot better.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesdays Off podcast. Today, my guest is Meredith Pizzi, founder of Roman Music Therapy Services and co-founder of Raising Harmony. Meredith is a pioneering music therapy entrepreneur whose work reimagines how music can deepen human connection, enhance well-being, and help individuals and organizations thrive. She is also deeply committed to advancing understanding of giftedness, equipping educators, parents, and entrepreneurs with the tools to recognize intensity, nurture strengths, and support the unique needs of gifted children and adults. I know a lot of us entrepreneurs maybe fall into that gifted category. So Meredith, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Stavros. Happy to be here with you.
But why don't we start with that? Why don't you give us a definition of gifted? I think too many times people hear the word and it just kind of means high IQ or smart person, and that's not necessarily what it means. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the term?
Sure. When we're talking about giftedness, and particularly when I'm talking with parents or educators or other entrepreneurs and adults, giftedness is a way to understand ourselves and each other when our systems process information and emotion and experiences differently. There is a neurological difference, there's a physiological difference, there's an emotional and cognitive difference in the way that information is absorbed, processed, and then also reinterpreted and shared with others. And it's often misunderstood. There aren't a lot of psychologists who are familiar in diagnosing giftedness. It's been seen as sort of the black sheep of diagnoses in many situations, that giftedness it has been seen as elitist. It's been seen as sort of a preferred category, almost in a way that
please label me gifted, right?
And my kid is gifted, right? And then if you say, oh, my child is gifted, people are thinking that your kid's special in some sort of way that takes away from the real lived experience that people have. Giftedness is complex. It's a difference in the way that we process information. And it can create a lot of challenges as well. Giftedness is not a pretty package with a bow on it all the time. There's a lot of emotional intensity, depth of thinking, deep thinking, existential questions, even at a young age, questioning meaning and purpose and belonging. And then there can be some challenges to relate to other people because not everybody thinks and talks in the same way. And that's fine. That's part of the neurodiversity landscape that I think we're all coming to understand a lot better today than we have in the past. But especially talking to entrepreneurs, I think often entrepreneurs recognize it in their children before they see it in themselves, or they may have been in a gifted program as children, but then they grow up and they're no longer in a gifted program and they don't think of themselves as gifted adults. But gifted children don't grow out of their giftedness. They just become gifted adults. And frankly, I think right now we know from the research that a lot of folks who are gifted are misdiagnosed. There's a lot of ways that we can be categorized into or the behaviors can be seen as different kinds of diagnoses, but it doesn't necessarily address the root of one's real lived experience.
We were talking earlier about the use of words, right? And sometimes how words do something justice or don't. But how did the word gifted get selected? Because I can imagine, the word does have a positive connotation. So it feels like saying my child is gifted. It does feel like you're bragging in a sense. I think, is it fair to say that it's somewhere on the neurodivergent landscape, and it's
I think it is safe to say that, yes, it is within this spread of neurodiversity in the ways that brains work differently. Originally it came from an intelligence bell curve, and so you had different labels assigned to different parts of the bell curve, and gifted or highly gifted, profoundly gifted were attached to that side of the bell curve, where other words were on the other side that have changed, right? The words that we use to describe locations on the intelligence bell curve 50 years ago are not the same words we use today. But giftedness hasn't necessarily found a better word. It's interesting because when I started talking more about giftedness with entrepreneurs and talking with folks whose first language is Spanish, it was really interesting trying to translate that word and having to do some research on what is the word in Spanish. And I think we landed on superdotado or superdotada is the word in Spanish, but it's a difficult one to place a name to because it's not just about being bright. It's not just about being smart. Giftedness really is a much broader experience than that. And there are lots of words that people have tried to use, the monkey brain, people will say, or, rainforest mind, creative intelligence. There's all kinds of different words that people, I think, will try to use and substitute to better, I think, actually connect with people and help them self-identify, because people won't necessarily identify with the phrase gifted or term gifted, but might identify with rainforest mind or something like that. I think that's been interesting to follow.
In my conversations with a lot of entrepreneurs on this podcast and elsewhere, a lot of them identify and call themselves as ADD or ADHD. You know what I mean? Are those overlapping? Are they similar? Are they describing?
Yeah, I'm not a psychologist and I don't diagnose, and it's not within my scope. So as a music therapist, I will say that is not my scope of practice. But I will say that I work with a lot of really unique individuals, and I've worked in a lot of really unique settings. And ADHD is absolutely a real thing. ADD is a real thing and a real experience. The challenge in focusing and attending to things is real. It's also possible that when you're really interested in something and absorbed in something, attention and focus is easy. And then there are other times when it's very challenging. And it's hard to sometimes check those two things out and really know, is it an inattention or is it an attention to everything all the time? And sometimes that is ADD, ADHD, and you can be gifted and have ADD or ADHD. You can also be gifted and have some of the characteristics that you might see in ADD or ADHD, but you're really not ADD or ADHD. And similar with autism, similar with oppositional defiant disorder, or oftentimes misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, actually, because of the range of emotional experiences. I like to describe it as folks typically have experiences of emotion that have a range, right? We get sad and we get happy, and we can get really sad and we can get really happy. But on the giftedness spectrum, it's much wider and broader. The emotional experiences, the highs are higher, the lows are lower, and the intensity is real. The experience of pain can be different, physical pain and emotional pain. It is a broader experience. And so I think if people are questioning their ADD or ADHD, I think learning about giftedness is worthwhile. It's about the intensity and complexity and drive that really defines giftedness. And those three characteristics are sometimes some.
Can you say a little bit about each one?
So yeah, intensity is really that intense focus, right? So we're talking about ADD where maybe there's a inability to focus. But with intensity, the things that really make us curious, the things that we want to lean into and read more about, we want to know everything about it. There's an interest in depth and really going deep to understand something, not just getting the answer to the question, but why and how and does everyone else know this, right? Like they'll give you this whole train of thoughts on that intensity of understanding and figuring things out. Complexity is being able to think macro and micro at the same time, being able to put together a lot of disparate ideas and thoughts, of seeing complexity and wanting to understand it. Not everybody sees complexity at the same level. Some people can see all the parts of the whole and how they fit together and where they're going to move together. It's that sort of ability to look at a landscape of things and make meaning of that and interpret that. So really complex thinking tends to align well with people who are gifted. That's the way they think. And then finally, so we said intensity, complexity, and drive is that stamina. Really intense drive and stamina to move things forward, to tackle problems, to work really hard, long hours, right? Because it actually comes easily. And in some ways, it's the fuel that keeps us going, right? So it might be for somebody else, like, how do you do all this? This is exhausting. I don't know how you can possibly do what you do. And for somebody with a really high drive and stamina, it's just the only way we know how to do it. So those are three main areas I think that adults should be considering.
I'd love to dive into each one of those a little bit just to highlight the positive and negative experience of those things for the individual, right? And maybe even for those around them. But when we talk about something like complexity, the middle one, it can be a superpower in that you can see a situation and understand it at a greater level of resolution than others. But it can also be paralyzing. It can also be overwhelming. It can be too much and get in the way of making progress, right?
Too much for yourself or too much for the people around you. Maybe you can't break the complex idea in your head down enough to be able to communicate with your team, right? Or to be able to, maybe it's somebody on your team is thinking in this complex way and you're not understanding what's going on because of the way that it's being communicated or broken down. Yeah, it absolutely can be paralyzing. I think that's a good word for it. It can also be incredibly overwhelming. Where do you start? How can I, especially when existential concerns, existential questions are really important for people who are gifted meaning and purpose and Like, if it's such a complex problem, how can I possibly make a difference? What can I do that would really move the needle? That kind of thinking can be really challenging and can create a lot of emotional struggle as well.
Yeah, a lot of riddled with emotional struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And then drive, maybe this is actually a good segue to talk about. So when I think about drive, I do think about, I once described my drive to someone, and they said, "Oh, that sounds manic. It doesn't sound driven, it sounds manic." And the truth is that to an extent it was, right? It was just kind of just this relentless drive, but my body was paying the price without me knowing, because my mind was driven. I was kind of going. But over the years, the toll on my neurological system, all of that stuff just started to add up. And so that drive was not universal. Just because my mind could go there does not mean that my nervous system was built to.
And it doesn't mean it's functional all the time.
Right.
So can we be aware of it? Can we be working with the drive rather than letting the drive run us? For a long time, I couldn't sit still, right? It's taken me a long time to learn how to appreciate stillness. I think COVID helped me with that too, because it forced me to slow down at a point in my life where I don't know if I would have learned the lesson yet. And women of my age, menopause is a whole nother thing that messes with all of our systems. And for me, it was physiologically like, slow down. You can't take anything else because your body is saying, whoa, enough. And that was an awful, I don't even know if wake up call is the right thing. But for me, it forced me to look at my stamina, my drive, my cortisol levels, like what's going on in my system and how are things working. So yes, drive can also take us away from meaningful relationships, right? We can be so driven by a particular goal, a particular project, that we don't take care of and nurture the other things around us that are important, whether that's physical exercise and health, or it's a marriage, or it's friendships, or it's family members, right? All of that can certainly take a toll if we're not aware of how our drive is impacting what we do and the choices that we make.
In your work in music therapy, is gifted people a group you work with, or are they separate interests?
So we actually see a lot of folks that I would say would qualify as twice exceptional. Some of them have a twice exceptional diagnosis, others do not. So giftedness is that one side of the bell curve, and twice exceptional is when you have both sides of the bell curve present. And so you can have an identified disability as well as the giftedness traits and characteristics. So that can often, and it can be combined in many different ways. We see kids who may not have the intellectual processing speed or the intellectual ability, but have this incredible creative drive, have an incredible expansive sense of the world around them and people around them. We have folks who maybe have autism and giftedness, or have some other kind of, we do see AD with giftedness. I'm trying to think of some other common diagnoses. And then sometimes I think there are some misdiagnoses, right? And then because kids' needs are not met, it's true for adults too, when our needs are not met, we're not able to reach our capacity. And so we see more behavioral concerns with kids who are misdiagnosed or not identified as gifted, because they're sitting in class, they're bored out of their mind, they're not getting the challenge that they need intellectually or academically, or they have the ability to know what they want to do, but there's some disability getting in the way of them accomplishing that, and they're not getting the supports for both their disability and their giftedness. And so we see that a lot, and we see kids who really struggle in educational environments because they're not getting the right tools and supports, and they're not being challenged in the right ways that their bodies and their brains really need. And so I see it more as twice exceptional needs in our clinical practice. Generally, we don't have a lot of folks who are solely gifted coming in for services, but there are definitely things that music therapy can do to support folks who are gifted, and that ability to go deep, the ability to consider songwriting, right? You might not be able to go deep in your history class at school, but we can support someone in really layering a lot of complex sounds and ideas in a musical structure, writing some songs about things that might give them an opportunity to exhibit some of that intensity and that drive. There's someone who loves punk music, and he writes some amazing songs. So there's definitely opportunities for people to find expression and find connection in music, as well as help learn to self-regulate. Playlists are a great tool when we need to cue our bodies and our brains to go into a certain space, whether that's relaxation or it's focused work time, or it's getting off the clock time and transitioning away from the computer, which many of us struggle with. Music can help us make those transitions. It can help us cue into different parts of ourselves, help us process. So music can be a useful tool in lots of different ways and helping support one's own professional or personal professional journey.
Maybe we can get into some of the tips and tricks and hacks, but give us a little bit of background. How did you get into music therapy? Why is it meaningful for you? How did you come to be where you are?
So when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I knew I wanted to help people with music. That was very clear to me. I was going to help people with music the way my music teachers had helped me. And so I was going to be a music teacher. I was quite clear about that. I, as an intense 7th grader, marched into my guidance counselor's office and said, I want to be a music teacher. What do I need to know about college? And at that grade level, they don't have anything on college in school. My guidance counselor had high school students at home, and she brought in one of those big college guidebooks. Do you remember before the internet, we had these big college guidebooks that we all had to use to look at schools. So I was digging and studying what schools I could go to for music education. And then the summer before my senior year of high school, I attended an arts camp. I went to Interlochen Arts summer program. It was amazing in Michigan. And I played trumpet all day, every day, and really immersed myself in this music environment. It was phenomenal. And talking to my beginning piano teacher one day after class, I was telling her what I wanted to do. And I wanted to help people with music. I was going to be a music teacher. And she said, well, have you ever thought about music therapy? And I said, no, that sounds like exactly what I want to do, but what is it? I've never heard of it. And that isn't like many people's story of music therapy. They don't know about it until they'll hear about it. So I was fortunate to hear about it before I went to college, redid my entire college search because none of the schools I planned to apply to had music therapy. Ended up studying music therapy. I thought I would do a double major, music ed, music therapy, but the philosophies are very different. So just to quickly describe the differences, music education is about learning music for music's sake, about understanding how to read music like you would read a language, about understanding how to appreciate music like you would appreciate culture and language and other things, about being able to identify instruments and songs and composers and history. Like there's learning that is valuable in music itself. Music therapy is about using music to facilitate movement towards personal and interpersonal goals. So in music therapy, we're using instruments, we're using songs, we're using song structures to support all other kinds of areas of growth. So emotional, social, language communication, physical, motor skill development. And to me, that was really where the magic of music was in its ability for music to move people, for music to connect people with each other and connect them with themselves, connect them with the music. For me, that's where the transformative power of music really sits. And so that's where my attention went. Full throttle. This is really what I want to be doing.
When you started describing this journey, you said, like my music teachers helped me. What was do you recall, moments with those music teachers and how they helped you and what they helped you with?
It's funny, when I think back to elementary school, I have very clear memories of the music room, right? And of records and the kind of experiences that we had. I switched elementary schools and went from a kind of your typical suburban school to the inner city school in our town. And I learned so much in that experience. And I think seeing how the music teacher facilitated and inspired and motivated and engaged all of us in that environment. And that's when I started playing the trumpet. That's when I started to find where my sense of belonging was. I was not a good sports kid. I played every sport, but I was terrible at all of them. I started playing trumpet and I started to find a spot where I could grow in my own confidence and my own self-awareness. And then I had such incredible peak experiences. Even in junior high, we played the theme song from Rocky, Gonna Fly Now, the Maynard Ferguson version. My trumpet teacher came and did the guest trumpet lead part. The rest of us played the score, like the full score for Rocky. It was the most incredible, exhilarating night of my life. I mean, it just was one of those moments when you feel like you are on fire and everybody around you is on fire and the performance just gelled. And I wanted to do that forever. Yeah. I wanted to feel that feeling. I wanted other people to feel that feeling. I wanted to keep flying in that sense, right? Like there was just this magic in making music with other people and sharing that I knew had to be part of my life somehow.
So it sounds like music helped you connect and find, right? It helped you connect with others and find your space yourself. So I could have imagined in that time you could have said, I just want to play music forever. I want to be in a band. I want to be in an orchestra. I want to be, but making the leap to, I want to help others with music is a bit of a twist to that. So what led to that twist?
I think it is a core value of mine that I probably, again, speaking of language, would not have been able to name in 7th or 8th grade. But there's something about authentic connection that happens in music making. It happens between the people who are performing, but it also happens with whoever is present listening, because music doesn't exist without a listener, right? I mean, there's active listening is a way of making and engaging in music. So there was something reciprocal that I felt in the section, with the conductor, with the other players in the organization, whatever band or symphony orchestra or whatever I was in. And then with the audience, right? To connect with other people, it was magic. It was magic. And I knew that I've seen it in other people as well. I mean, I know that for me, there was no way music could not be present in my life moving forward. And I've gone through a lot of shifts, right? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, and as much as I am a board certified music therapist, and that is my original training, that's the technical skill that I developed that then put me on a path of entrepreneurship. I did not expect to be a business owner. I expected to be an academic. I thought I was going to study music therapy, and then I was going to go on to teach music therapy. As an intern, my supervisor started sending me clients because she didn't want to take it on. So I started building a private practice while I was still technically a student. Got my degree, finished my program, finished my certification, and just started building a business. Started in New York, lived there for a number of years, moved to Boston, started another larger business here, and really grew that over the last 20 years. Started another training organization about 13 years ago to train music therapists in the early childhood program we had developed. So as a clinician, I've gone through all of these changes, and my relationship with music continues to shift and to change. The way I see the potential of music now, I'm thinking a lot about how do we scale this? Like, I know how to do it one-on-one in a clinical setting. I know how to supervise music therapists, all those things that I've done. Our team is really phenomenal at going out and making transformative musical experiences happen every single day. We call them magical musical moments, right? Like, we have that experience. How do we take what we know and package that somehow so that everyone can feel the impact of music, regardless of how close they live to a music therapist, or if they have a music therapist in their school or in their hospital setting or wherever they might be?
Are you imagining them feeling it as an audience member or feeling it as a co-creator, or how are you imagining them participating?
I think both are important. I think sometimes being a recipient, being able to receive, like in any of our self-care activities, right? Sometimes we just need to receive. I think there's value in that. But I also think there's value in the autonomy of choosing, of creating, of even, we talked about earlier about being aware of ourselves and our bodies. Asking someone, what is the music that makes you take a deep breath? Like you already know there's music in it used to be in your, tape decks or your CD collection, but now on your Spotify playlist, what are the songs that help you relax? Mm-hmm. What are the songs that pick you up when you're feeling down? What are the songs you put on when you need a really good cry, right? And we can start to co-create those soundscapes, those playlists, those toolboxes or toolkits that help you tap into your own emotional state when you need to, or help you move towards a new emotional state. Sometimes it's good to sit in the crying music, and sometimes it's time to put on a different playlist and say, all right, I got this. And this is my pep talk kind of that I'm going to give myself through my playlist this morning. I think all of them are valuable, and people can have whatever autonomous role I think they need to have at different times to create.
My wife and kids, I don't know if they still do it, but sometimes when I've ridden in the car with them to school, they listen to Jay Shetty, and it's just kind of his morning brief. And then they talk about whatever's going on. And so when you were describing it, that's what I was imagining. I was imagining some kind of shared ritual where you get in touch with music for a second, and then you kind of, eventually find your way, because it's such a powerful tool. It goes past any kind of logical sense, you know what I mean? Any kind of sense making, and just kind of hits you deeper and connects you with a part of your body, your mind. I don't know. You could probably describe it better, but it seems to pass certain filters. So how would you describe it?
It's processed differently. So music is processed differently in the brain than anything else. It actually lights up more centers of the brain than other things. So if you're speaking to someone, it goes through the traditional language patterns of the brain, and it's going to decode that language. But when you're singing, even if you're singing words, it goes through multiple parts of the brain and elicits different responses. So it can bypass challenges in the brain, for example, Alzheimer's and dementia, or autism, where you have children who are not speaking yet, but they will sing songs. Or you have older adults with memory loss who can sing choruses and verses of songs that they knew, particularly from their late teens, early 20 decade. Although they can't necessarily put together a coherent sentence of language, right? So the brain does process music differently. It's also a physiological experience when we're creating acoustic music with others. I think that can make a big difference in accessing things. And we talk about how we can talk and talk and talk, and the plane will keep circling around and circling around, but music can help land that plane. Music can help it ground. And so whether it's creating music or listening to music that you've chosen for a particular reason, there's intention behind it. All of that can make a big difference. And just as a simple example, one thing that came to mind as we were talking is a couple of years ago, my oldest and my youngest were both moving away to school at the same time. The oldest was starting college. The youngest was starting at a boarding high school. And our two daughters had not gone to boarding high school. So this was a big shift in our family. So at the beginning of the year in January, I had said, this is going to be a mama year. Like, of all the things and projects that I have going on, the most important thing is the mama year. And I'm going to have my oldest and my youngest sort of leaving the nest, and our middle would be home. So there were so many different changes and transitions. And I created a playlist for myself in January that all year long was sort of my guiding, grounding core. And I could choose songs that, how do I want to be about this? And how do I want this to be for our family? And how do I want to process this? That playlist was really, really, really helpful. And I think I might have had a much harder time in September when everybody left if I hadn't prepared myself in that way.
Such an interesting, so I have two questions. One is an observation, one is a question. So maybe let me give the observation and the question. I remember making playlists when you'd have to kind of like maybe even wait for the song on the radio. So you hit the record button to get it. Or maybe you had a double deck and you had the tape somewhere, but you wanted to make a playlist. I would buy playlists from friends. There were people in school who would make money, you know, kind of putting together playlists. And with all the streaming services now, you just kind of find something that feels right and you listen to it. And from a consumption perspective, it's great. Right? It's really, really easy from the consumer perspective. I'm like, I kind of want to feel this. Here's a song, and then it goes and it finds the playlist or makes up the playlist that works. But from a creator perspective, it's not the same, right? To actually have to think about what song do I want to play next, and what do I want to feel, and how do I want the experience of somebody listening to this, whether it's me or somebody else, to be. It's almost like a lost. It's a thing our generation got to do that I don't think the next generation does.
And it was a gift. I mean, I still have tapes that have my friend's handwriting on the little sticker, you know, that they made that mixtape for me. And what are the songs that they put on it? Yeah. And it was a contest to capture the song on the radio. But, you know, that was a big deal for us. So, yeah, Spotify has changed it completely. And I think, honestly, our little headphones that we carry around have changed things completely, because now we trust that, frankly, the AI generator on Spotify knows best what we need to listen to. And they become very isolated individual experiences sometimes. It's not so much about going to although records are having a comeback, right? When you can go back and flip through the vinyls and talk about the music and look at the back, even listen to an album from start to finish to see how an artist wanted the music to flow from one song to another.
Yeah, an album.
The theme of the album. We don't even get albums to listen to very often anymore. Just last week, I was like, I really want to listen to an album, like in order, not on shuffle. Yeah. What does that look like, sound like? So I think there is something about the creative process in how we shape music. You can do it with Spotify playlists.
You can create your own playlist.
You can cultivate it, you can order it, you can do those things, but you have to go an extra step to think through how you're going to do that and what you want the meaning to be in it. Because it is very easy to trust and just assume that the Spotify for you playlist is the one you really want or need to hear right now. But again, we have choice. We don't have to. Yeah. We don't have to.
I wonder if this is not a very me question, because I'm not a very paranoid person, but I wonder, obviously, if there is a playlist and music passes some of the systems, you can use music to put people in certain moods. So I'm sure you could use a playlist to start somebody off in one mood and end them in another.
Well, they've actually done this commercially for a long time, Stavros. So, you know, music that is faster in a restaurant is designed to get you in and out faster.
Right.
You know, music that is slower in the restaurant is designed to keep you there. Slower music in the store is designed to keep you there to spend more money, right? I wish more businesses would think about hold music, because the hold music that you're listening to while you're waiting ad nauseum to deal with some sort of business issue that you have can just continue to agitate you.
Right. It's usually slow, right? It's usually like...
Or sometimes they put on ridiculously aggressive classical music, and you're like, why? Why are you playing this for me right now? I'm already bothered, or I wouldn't be calling you. And now I'm listening to this raucous kind of large contemporary classical piece. It just, people don't always think about it. But I think if we could think about music as part of our oral diet, what are we taking in, A-U-R-A-L? Like, what are we taking in our ears and our bodies and our sounds? How do we choose that in a way to maintain our balance, our health, our growth, all those things?
I never heard that word before.
Oral?
Yeah.
I think of things like going to the symphony orchestra as an oral massage. Like sometimes I just want to go to feel music and to hear it. But yeah, oral is O-R-A-L, we take in our mouth, but A-U-R-A-L is through our ears. And what are we consuming? What are we absorbing? What do we want to hear? You know, is the TV on in the background all the time in your home or in your work?
How does that make you feel? I mean, during COVID, I remember and lockdowns, just talking to different friends and which ones had CNN or whatever on repeat in the background just forever and how they felt versus people who were like, I've just shut it all off and I'm just going about, you know what I mean? I put on some music I like and I've decided to take up painting, right? Like there's a very different
experiences. Yeah. And music can be really helpful in times of transition or times of challenge. So pain management, when you have to have a surgery, preparing for a surgery with a playlist that's going to help you settle or help your children before and after surgeries. We had a lot of ear tube surgeries in our family for our kids when they were little. And so we would have playlists for different surgeries. And you have the music to bring you in, and then you have the music to bring you out of surgery. That can be really helpful for people, someone going through chemotherapy. There's lots of ways that music can be helpful, or even end of life and hospice. If you have a family member who is approaching death and dying, how do we use music to bring us together as a family? You know, what are the songs we want to remember as a family or that the individual wants to share? We can be really intentional about music and in all of those ways. We just have to remember that it's there and it's available to us as a tool.
One of the things that's always fascinated me, whether I'm talking about my kids or my nephews or other babies, is put on some music and they start to move. You know what I mean? And it's not something they saw. It's not something they learned. It's just the connection between what kind of goes in through the ears and how the body moves as a response seems to be hardwired in. I have no idea why evolution would have done that. Do you?
So a lot of my work is actually in early childhood development. A lot of my clinical expertise is actually early childhood development. And music is developmental. We think of music as this cultural thing or the societal thing, but music is actually hardwired into our systems, and it is shared in our vocalizations from when we're born. We hear our mother's voice before we're born, and we recognize that, our moms, our dads, our siblings, when we are born. The musical experience and the draw to music is absolutely innate, and it is developmental, and we can see when music development is delayed and how that aligns with other areas of development, actually. And I think one of the most powerful things about understanding that is parents can use music as a helpful tool to support their child's development and support attachment and attunement and bonding, which frankly, I think we need more than ever, given the way that digital devices have become substitutes and proximates for interaction now.
Can you make that tactical for us? Like, what's an example of how a parent can use the music to support?
Absolutely. Music can be used to call people towards and also call people away from things. And so it might be just that basic engagement of playing with your child while they're sitting in the stroller and you're waiting to do something and you're sitting in front of them and you're singing a song, literally just making music together. Yeah. It can be going on a walk and you're behind them, but you're singing, look at the snow in the trees, or look at the leaves falling down, and you have a little song that you make up as you go. We all make up songs, right? Diaper changing or putting a seatbelt on, those things that are really difficult in a baby's daily routines. They don't want the seatbelt on. They don't want to get into the car seat. Using a song that's really well-versed in a family, it's familiar, it's become fun, it's become something that we do together, will distract the child from the task of getting the seatbelt on or getting the diaper change and make it a playful, interactive moment. What I'm seeing more now everywhere in the community is people are handing their kids cell phones.
Yeah.
As a way to
iPad,
that from here to there. Music actually is the bridge. Music can be the bridge and the transition and the way to stay engaged, even if we're not face to face. You can be cooking at witching hour at 5:00 when the little ones are at home and like going crazy because they need dinner. You can be singing a song while you're stirring the pot. You can be putting on some dance party music and having a dance party in the kitchen while we're waiting for dinner. There are so many ways music can be a connective tissue in our days and in our relationships. But instead, it's easier sometimes to just say, here's YouTube, right?
Yeah.
But we're missing a lot in that dynamic when we walk away. And the foundation of trust in self, in others, and in the world is repeated experiences that communicate safety and communicate that I am okay and you are okay and we are okay. Music makes that happen. Music is a foundational way to build trust and experiences. And I think we all need a lot more trust in ourselves, in each other, and in the world around us. So
otherwise, fear takes over and you start responding to the fear as opposed to the safety.
That's right. That's right. And you don't have an experience of safety to build upon, right? To take risks, to go out and try new things, or to interact with people, make a phone call, send an email. There's those basic things that are really difficult for people sometimes. And so building trust, I think, is really important in early childhood. So beyond the musical expression experiences, I think we could do a lot more to kind of fortify the human experience by using more music with our children.
When you were describing when you were illustrating the seatbelt example, I saw you choose your words carefully. So I have a question. Does that look like something like coming up with a seatbelt song? Or does that look like something having a different song that already makes them feel good that you then also use for the seatbelt? Because in my mind, I'm like, if there's a seatbelt song, maybe they just then associate that song with discomfort. Or is it just the melody of the song?
I do have seatbelt songs for sure. We have a lot of seatbelt songs. They end up being lap rides that we do in music classes. So, we're going to sing a lap ride song to keep you safe, safe, safe. Put your seatbelt on. So if that song is in your repertoire as a family, because you've come to my music classes and we've done that together in Sprouting Melodies, and then you go home and you're like, oh, to keep you safe, safe, safe. And you can do that at the car. That works. But it also works that if like one of your favorite songs in your repertoire is You Are My Sunshine, maybe you're going to, You Are My Sunshine, not like super slow and calm, because they might not be feeling super slow and calm, right. But like get them going with a song that's familiar and fun for your family. The song doesn't have to speak to exactly what you're doing all the time. And in fact, what we know in the music research is oftentimes people use what we call piggyback songs. So you might I'm trying to think of an example a lot of people do, but this is the way we wash our hands, wash our hands, wash our hands. This is the way we wash our hands. But then you might say, oh, this is the way we put our coat on, put our coat on, put our coat on. And we use the same musical construct for all these different things. It's actually confusing to the brain. And so the child is going to always associate that song to the first thing they learned it with. So you don't really want to piggyback over and over and over again and use the song for 5 or 6 different purposes if you're trying to cue something in particular.
Well, and that goes to your earlier point that it's not about the words. It's about bypassing the words almost and getting to a feeling. It's more about
it's getting to a feeling, a connection, about attention towards something. So if I'm trying to get a child in a seatbelt and they're looking at me and I'm singing, now they're attending to me. They're not attending to the seatbelt so much.
Right.
And as parents, as adults, you're a parent, I'm a parent. We're both in our heads a lot, right? Like adults are in their own heads busy a lot. And if we can remember to use the music as a way to take us out of our own heads, to be present in the moment, to be present to our children, that makes a difference.
I think most people have some use of music, right? They may say, oh, this is the playlist I put on when I need to get into some deep work, or they say, I listen to music when I work out, or, so I think most people have some connection to using music, but I don't think it's anywhere near as proactive and maximized as it could be. It feels like most of us have some unintentional relationship with music as opposed to having a very intentional one. And a while back, I did a workshop with scientists on the topic of olfaction, taking in scents through the nose. And one of the things that I learned in that workshop is how ancient olfaction really is and how powerful it is. And to validate it, I had an experience where somebody opened a frosting. Like, I don't know if it was Duncan Hines or what it was. It was some like really bad for you frosting that they opened. And I got a whiff of this smell that I had not smelled since I was 3 years old making a cake with my grandmother. You know what I mean? Because when we were little, nobody knew any better and they fed us all these chemicals, right? But it took me back instantly. It was so amazing how just the slightest smell could take me back in time. And music, I feel, does the same kind of thing where it just bypasses everything that's going on right now and transforms you somewhere. So what are some ways, and maybe we can find a way to think about entrepreneurs and maybe some parenting here tips. So self-care, entrepreneurial team, and parenting. What are some more intentional ways, like you just described with the kids in the seatbelt? What are some intentional ways we can use it with our teams? What are some intentional ways we can use it for ourselves to up our game a little bit from just, I passively listen to music when I work out to something more profound?
Well, I think the word intention is so important. right? I think we need to create some sort of intention around music. What purpose do we want music to fulfill for us in this moment at this time? And then thinking about the context. Is this for me personally? Is this just for my own balance, grounding, well-being, stretch, or, physical movement, all of those things? What is the intention that I have for me personally? But you can also go to a setting or a context of my relationship with my child. How do I want that? And as you alluded to, how do I want to use this with my team? So I think first you decide what is the intention, what is the setting or environment, who are the people involved? And then there's so many choices of how to get there and how to do that. Do I want to actively make music? Do I want to create some sort of music? And there are ways to do that, even without a great deal of musical skill or training. So you can sit down at a piano and you can play on all the black keys. If you know that all the black keys sound good together, you can play anything you want on all the black keys and it's going to sound lovely. So maybe you have a keyboard.
I did not know that.
So all the black keys are called the pentatonic scale. And if you have a keyboard sitting around the house, because someone took piano lessons once, it's not being used, you could put it in your office and you could just doodle on the black keys and you can make it upbeat or you can make it very calm and quieting for yourself. But you could produce music quite easily. You can pick up an instrument. Learning an instrument or learning to sing is actually a great cognitive exercise for our brains as we age as well. So maybe it's about finding new skill and enjoyment that way. Joining an ensemble. I joined a choir this year. It has been so awesome. I got my husband to come along. He's not as musically trained as I am. It's been a good challenge, but it's been a lot of fun. My sister and her husband, who have much less musical experience, joined an adult rock choir, and they sing in that every week, and they do pop music, and they've loved that. So you can find ways to engage in active music making, or you could select music to listen to that is going to help give you the experience that you want to have individually. When we think about sharing that with our families, it can be talking to our teens about the music they like a lot more and listening to their music. As adults, I think we often forget how important music is to teen identity development. And so while we may not be searching for a lot of new music, our teenagers are getting new music. What are they hearing? What are they listening to? And put aside whatever genre it is that you think you don't like or whatever words are in the music. Think about that music as a representation of their development and where they are in their lives and what's important to them. And really listen and ask them about it. What do you like about this song? It can open up so many different conversations. And then you can pull together some shared playlists as a family or with your children, whether it's a road trip playlist or it's a on our way to school playlist or on our own from school playlist. When our family took a road trip, we created the People You Meet Along the Way playlist. And we asked everyone we met in different cities and towns to give us a song to add to our playlist. Cool. That was so fun. We collected the most random songs. Yeah. And it was not a playlist you could listen to straight through because it was so random. But it was a great conversation starter and a great thing for us to do as a family as we made our way across the country. Thinking about with your team, creating collaborative playlists can be really helpful. And you don't have to have a lot of musical skill, but you could ask a prompt and say, what's the song that brings you joy?
Yeah, what a great way to connect, right? What a great icebreaker activity. I mean, it's whatever song they remember is going to be so connected to them and you could vary the question. What a great...
You can use the prompts. We do a check-in question every Friday at our staff meeting. And the facilitator changes each week and the facilitator gets to choose the question of the day. And last week, the question of the day was, what's the last song you listened to? That was cool because you learn all these different things about people in the room. Now, we're all music therapists and we think a lot about music, but even for a team who's not all connected to music, what's the last song you listened to? Or what's the last concert you went to? Right? What do you learn about people when you share a little bit about their musical interests? It can also be going to a karaoke night with your team. There's some open karaoke kind of places, but they also have these private karaoke spots now where you can rent a room and just go do karaoke with your team. Those have been some really fun moments for our team to do that. There are so many different ways, and I'd be happy to chat with anyone about it. But I think there's lots of ways we can think about music as a consultative force. And how could music really help us move towards whatever our goals are?
Yeah, I think so many times we just get caught up on the logic and the words of whatever it is we're trying to communicate. And we don't think about the greater experience. And when we start to think about the greater experience, what we hear, what we smell, what we see, all of those things become variables. And each one of those variables is so infinitely manipulatable, right? Yeah. That you can really have much deeper impacts than just saying, hey team, I want us all to participate in this thing. And it's, that's only going to get so far. Most of us ignore, it's kind of what they say about like body language, right? Your communication only, what is it, 5% of it is verbal. So
but it's everything else, right? And I've done lots of experiences with clapping hands, patting knees, patting a table, or bringing instruments and putting drums in people's hands with teams and professional development experiences, where getting a team to find a groove together and make music together can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And we could talk through team dynamics in the music. We can have everybody in this department play this way and everybody in this department play this way and say, how does it really sound when we're working together, folks? I think there's lots that we can use music as a metaphor in our workplaces as well and bring tools in that way.
Resistance to music. What does it say when someone is uncomfortable with maybe a particular song or maybe with music altogether?
We actually see that a lot in our work. And I'll say there are two types of clients who are best served by music therapy. One is the individual where music is their language, right? Whether they're speaking or non-speaking, music is their way of connecting with other people. Music is their way of learning. Music is their way of experiencing. That's really important because that's their primary way of interacting in the world. So they definitely benefit from music therapy. The other is folks who can't integrate music. I've worked with many clients who, if somebody started singing happy birthday, they freak out. And if you think about it, the next time you're at a birthday party, listen to how happy birthday sounds. It's usually terrible. And all the lights are turned off at the same time. Everybody starts singing. Nobody has picked a key, so we're not singing in the same key. Everybody's in a different part. Everybody's singing all over the place. It sounds terrible. So you can understand how someone with any auditory processing challenges would be terrified when their group breaks out into happy birthday. Happy birthday and other experiences are an important part of our social lives as people. And so using music therapy can help folks integrate music and also tolerate music in different settings that can be very, very helpful. I think across the board, kind of generally speaking, the resistance that you mentioned, kind of where do we see that resistance? I think it's people having been told that they're not good at it in the past. And so as a music therapist, I tell everyone my job is to remind you that we are all musical beings and that there is no being good at this, right? Nobody has to be good at this. And I joke that my sister still tells me I can't sing and I got paid to sing. I'm a trumpet player growing up, right? Like I was not a singer. I'm a trumpet player. She was the singer. And she still tells me I can't sing, but I get paid to sing, right? This is my job. And people usually laugh and like, okay, right? I don't consider myself to be a great singer, but I can sing to connect. And when I do large music gatherings, I say, I'm not here to perform for you. I'm not here as a performer. I'm here to make music with you and to help make you make music with your loved ones. So let's do this all together. So again, I think that setting intention so that people don't know they're on the spot to perform or be perfect or have to be good at something can decrease some of the resistance that people feel when they think they're put on the spot and that they're not good enough. Generally what it's about.
I definitely fall not in the category somewhere around there. So my daughter and I go sailing. We try to go every other weekend. We end up going. Now it's a little cold, so we haven't been in a while. And she's very into music. And we take a playlist with us and we play it and we sing along. And she didn't say anything judgmental. And I said to her, I really wish I could sing better. And she said, sing something for me. And so I did. And she said, you're not singing, you're talking. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? And so she...
Have you had a chance to really sing, Stavros? Like, are you in environments where you can sing?
So my dad used to sing a lot, and he used to sing when we would go out, and they would, he would get invited on stage to sing at like a nightclub, like a Greek nightclub, but he would also sing in the car. He would sing walking up and down the steps. You know what I mean? He was just always singing. So I have a lot of memories of music fondly. I know I would get in the car and sing with my dad, you know what I mean? And feel like I was singing my heart out. I know that when I was in my teenage years, and I was into the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or all of that stuff, I would sing with my friends. And then at some point, I actually got the benefit of listening to benefit's the wrong word, hear myself sing. And I became very self-conscious about singing at that point in time. And I was like, I want to do this better because I love the emotion I get, but I don't feel comfortable enough doing it. I don't feel competent enough doing it to feel comfortable. And I would say that the same thing is true for me about dancing. Like, I really wish I could do more of it, but I don't feel competent enough to feel comfortable.
Well, and part of that is the self-consciousness creeps in of what is somebody next to me thinking or what are they judging me for? And the truth is that everybody's thinking that. And so nobody's really listening to anybody else because they're all worried about how they're being perceived. And so I think part of it is shaking that off and just being able to jump in. But part of it is finding the right environment where you feel like we were talking about safety and trust, right? Where do you feel like you can feel safe enough to sing in full voice and have a good time? And maybe it isn't a lesson for a couple of times. Maybe it is just feeling like, yeah, I got this. Maybe it's joining some sort of singing group where you can melt into the section and not necessarily have to feel like you're on the spot, but you can find that joy in singing. There's a lot of great community adult music making ensembles that are non-auditioned and you can just go in and sing. My sister's choir that they're in, there's a big rule. You never criticize someone else's singing. That is a rule. You never mention anyone else's singing because it's not about that, right? It's about coming together and making music together.
Right. Now, I need to find my way to connect because it is really meaningful to me. And the first part of what you said of like nobody else is watching you because they're all thinking about themselves. That's a great example of like, I get that logically, but it doesn't make it through the filter.
Yeah. And I think it then is one of the gifts that I think we have as music therapists is being able to create environments where people feel safe. And whether that's through instrument play or through singing or through sharing some experiences together, it just brings to mind for me, sometimes music has to be facilitated in the right way, right? That it is. And you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's not just that Happy Birthday is an example, but there are songs that can be emotionally triggering for people. There are songs that can trigger memories that are not pleasant, that are traumatic, that are really, really difficult. And so being aware of that, music is an important lifeline for people and it can impact us in a lot of different ways. And so we do need to be really sensitive to that. I think there's a lot of conversation in my field still about folks who are not trained in using music, who go in and just kind of make assumptions or believe that this tempo or this speed or is this something is right for everybody. And you can't generalize that way. And so really understanding that music impacts all of us differently at different times of our lives and how we can be sensitive to that, to each other. And I think that's true in the workplace too, right? Don't assume that everybody's going to feel really good about the one song you want to put on.
Yeah, they may have a bad memory associated with it. Who knows, right? It's interesting. I love so many different aspects came out today in terms of connecting with music as a consumer, connecting with music as a creator, connecting with music as a co-consumer, as a co-creator, right? All of those things. And I think what really jumped out at me was the use of your word language, because the intent of language is ultimately to connect with someone else. And so language is not just words, right? Language, expanding that definition to music and to many other things as a way to connect really jumped out at me as a way to rethink and reprocess the role of so many things in life, not just music.
Hopefully that can allow us to tap into listening better to other people's communication, right? Communication comes across in a lot of different ways. So again, whether that's in our workplaces or at home, or even just in our time alone, how do we use music as a way to communicate, to connect, to understand other people better?
How is there ever enough time for all the amazing things that life could offer us?
Fortunately, we have years and years, right? Like nothing can be right now. I said something to my team recently. Somebody was just kind of expressing their frustration about not being able to have it all or not being able to do it all. And I was like, well, I was told as a student that you can't have it all and you can't do it all. And this is what I've come to understand is that you absolutely can have it all and you can do it all. You just can't do it all alone and you can't have it all at the same time. But if we can use our communities and we can extend the amount of time we consider as, opportunity, we can do it all and we can.
So where are you now in your journey? What's next?
So we're celebrating 20 years of roaming music therapy services this year, which is really exciting. So 20th year there.
Congratulations.
Continuing to grow and continuing to expand our services. Raising Harmony is my second organization. That's the training organization. We've gone through a huge rebranding process this past year. Really excited about where we are now. Using music to support really transforming and elevating the human experience. So a lot of the conversation we're talking about today, how do we bring this into people's lives? Mm-hmm. How do we make it something that caregivers can tap into, whether it's paid or professional caregivers or family caregivers, caring for young children or aging adults with disabilities, all of those things that we're impacted within our human experience. And then really working to expand my public speaking opportunities and share with people both about music and music therapy and how music can be a helpful tool, but also around giftedness and awareness of giftedness for entrepreneurs, for our families, and in the educational areas as well. Because I think that's something that we're losing a lot of talent and we're losing a lot of potential for people because we are underestimating their needs and not appropriately meeting the needs of many of our learners. So I think that's something else that we need to be thinking about. And I think even the gifted groups of entrepreneurs, I think, could better understand their intensity, complexity, and drive and channel out in ways that would serve them and their families and their companies even better.
What a great medium on a public stage to give a keynote when you can incorporate music and incorporate it in this way, in all the ways you described today. I imagine that would make a very, very engaging talk. We went to Global Speaker Academy together. Did you apply for certification? Did you go through that process?
I did. I'm still waiting to hear. I don't know if you've heard anything yet.
Well, by the time this airs, we'll have heard, but
we will have heard. I'm looking forward to it. I definitely saw that as a really pivotal moment for me as a public speaker and practicing telling stories and understanding opportunities. I felt like I learned so much that week and had a really wonderful experience connecting with so many other amazing entrepreneurs from around the world. So that was a really special event, and I am looking forward to continuing that journey for sure.
Now, are you doing your public speaking through your companies, or do you have a separate website for that? Like if somebody wanted to bring you in, where should they go?
So as of right now, it's sort of depending on the topic, which company it's going through.
Okay.
So Roman Music Therapy Services, Raising Harmony, and then we're working on a meredithpizzi.com page, but that's not live yet. So for right now, I think meredithpizzi.com feeds you back to Roman Music Therapy Services.
But it might be live by the time this airs.
It might be live by the time this airs. Yeah. So music
and the worst thing that could happen
is also an option. Yeah.
The worst thing that'll happen is it'll redirect you to one of the other sites. So
exactly.
Meredith, I usually ask people to kind of help expose a lie and a truth, and then to help give people permission to act differently, right? Most of us entrepreneurs are kind of stuck because there's some lie that we're adhering to that we haven't given ourselves permission. A lot of times we even know it's a lie, but we haven't given ourselves permission to behave in a new way, to make a decision differently. We talked about a lot of things today, but does one lie kind of come up, or one new truth come up that would help summarize some of the biggest learning you've done?
So I think the easy, obvious one is that, I'm not musical or I'm not good at that is a lie, right? It's just a lie. It's the story that we've been told by somebody along the way, or it's a story we've told ourselves that has really truthfully cut us off from our human experience of music. And so I think that's a lie that can just be sort of shaken off, let go, and reevaluated.
So how does one give themselves permission to make that change? As someone who's guilty of that, and probably telling myself, right, that I'm not good. So how do I shake it off? How do I give myself permission to sing a little louder when I'm part of a crowd? Or
I think it's just recognizing that, as you were talking about the olfactory system, right? Like music is ancient. So we have been making music since the beginning of time. And it's always been part of our rituals. It's been part of our celebrations. It's been part of our grief. It's been part of our transitions and seasons and changes. I think we can claim that. Let's reclaim music to be something that serves us. Reclaim music to be something that can help us pass through our lives here and the things and experiences that we have, the relationships that we have, and claim it in a way that we can create a new relationship with music. For many people with mental illness, for many people who have struggled with suicidality or suicidal ideation, music can be a lifeline, that a relationship that can hold us and help us through hard times. Just many people rely on faith. They rely on their music. They rely on their physical activity. It's one of those things that can be a cornerstone for our lives. But we have to claim it and make that relationship whatever we want it to be. And maybe it's that singing isn't going to be the way you choose to explore that relationship. Maybe it's through other ways first. And that's fine. But find a way to connect with music and befriend music again, so that music can help serve your life purpose and your mission and help connect you.
And make that relationship intentional, right? I think many people have a passive relationship with music, and I think there's so much to unlock by making it. You go to the gym, you work out, you have an active relationship with your body. Why not have an active relationship with music as well?
And how many people go to the gym and don't really have an active relationship with their body either?
That's also
how many of us go through that passive, like, check the box, I did it, but there's an opportunity to go deeper. There's an opportunity to get to know yourself better and to share that with others.
I used to love going to gym classes because somebody thought of the whole workout for me and I just show up and it was easy. And I've actually come to really enjoy designing my own workouts and showing up and starting them and then kind of going, oh, that's what that feels like. So going to the gym feels more like church to me than anything else these days, because I'm really there to listen. I'm not there to push my body through it. It's like I'm going to do this motion and listen to what my body's telling me in response. And
so I guess going back to that other truth, that is just about the power of intention.
Say more.
Well, it's the ability to intend what that workout is going to be, or what that relationship with music is going to be, or how music and a playlist can support you in your work right now, or in your family right now. It's about really putting some thought and choice into how we relate to music and how we want music to serve us.
Ahead of the interview, you sent me a book about leadership. Is it something you wanted to chat about? Is it something you wanted to expound upon?
Yeah, somewhere in our conversation, Stavros, we were talking about individualism versus collectivism. And I don't remember exactly the context.
I think we were probably talking about how it feels like society is struggling with that right now. How much individualism, how much collectivism.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, I thought I'd be an academic, and part of the purpose of getting my master's, I did my master's in public administration. And part of that was just getting to the point where I could teach, right? I still wanted to teach. So I have been fortunate enough to teach in a number of graduate programs, a number of different colleges, and design some courses. And I was able to design a course in leadership for a music therapy master's program, which was awesome. And I really dug into books, right? What are you going to use as a source for a text in a college graduate course on leadership? So I was buying books and reading books and reading books and reading books. And when I finally came across that book, Salsa, Soul and Spirit, it was like, this is the text I've been looking for. And it outlines different aspects of the experience in African-American, Hispanic, Latin American, and Native American communities, and provides these great ways of framing leadership and the ways that we build community through a collective approach. I found that to be a really valuable read and a great resource to teach from, because I think it sets a different intention. Mm-hmm. It sets a different way of leading and a different way of connecting. And I think a lot of it does connect with music making as well, right? In the way that we create bonds and create shared experiences. A lot of my own research in music therapy has been around building social capital. How do we use music to put money in the piggy bank of social capital so that we as human beings can draw from it when we need it?
Well, how interesting.
And so I think that's really important. And that also connects to a lot of the collectivist thinking around leadership and building community and building teams. So, yeah.
I think for me, the question I always find myself asking is, why is somebody leading? Are they leading because they're trying to shove their vision down everybody's throat? Are they leading because they're trying to solve a problem on behalf of something more important? Like, why did they assume that leadership position? And in a sense, the more reluctantly they've assumed that leadership position, the happier I am to kind of listen, and hear them out and learn more about what they're doing and why it's important to them. And I think you can tell, we were talking about how music bypasses, but so many things bypass, right? And so you could just spend 2 minutes with someone and kind of get a feeling. You can get an ick feeling, and you're like, all right. And then you should validate, by all means, you should validate your assumption there. But it's really easy to get that ick feeling from a leader who's really just in it for themselves and not in it for anything greater. It's harder to detect a leader who's actually in it for a bigger purpose. It's a bit harder to parse that out and say, you're left kind of not knowing until you find a way to confirm or ask some questions.
I think, and maybe it's the training and learning that I did in a public administration program looking at government and nonprofit sectors and all of that, but I think a lot of it comes back to common good. Mm-hmm. And does a leader have an understanding of common good? What is their common good? How do they measure common good versus what's in it for me, right? Is it a self-driven, self-serving opportunity, or is really advancing some understanding of the common good? Now, I think there's a lot of challenge in landing on a common definition of common good right now. I think that's part of the political challenge that we face, is we don't agree on what the common good is. But I think as leaders, we can have a common good in mind. What is the benefit for employees, for clients, for customers, for the community, for the environment? It's that sort of understanding of shared experience, shared responsibility, shared good. Shared good. I think that's leaders of heart, actually.
I think when the exchanges become transactional, it's another indicator too, right? When somebody goes, oh, I'm responsible, just tell me what I'm responsible for. Great, I did it. I checked the box. I handed it over. To me, that's a huge indicator of the unhealthiness of that organization because, well, I don't know if it works or doesn't work monetarily, but from a connection standpoint, it doesn't work as a tribe, as a group. And I imagine when the going gets tough, that group will fall apart. And most organizations, whether we're talking about businesses or not-for-profits or anything, there will be times where things will be easy and there will be times when things get tough. I think that's just a rule of life. And so I tend to think about it as, if I'm asking, someone who works for me to care about something, do I first care about them? Right? Like, that's my very first question is like, do I care about this person? And if they don't look like they care about me or what we're doing or each other, then they don't really fit on my team. I don't know that I pass judgment on that. I just know they don't fit, if that makes sense, right? Because there is value in things that are transactional too, right? Some things just need to be easy and work, and they're not a source of connection, and they just kind of need to be like, give me X, give me Y, and it'll work. But that's always been my filter that I've used to kind of figure out, because I don't really love leadership, if that makes sense.
Sure it does.
It feels like a huge burden.
And it is.
And nobody's ever going to be happy with whatever the outcome is, which has given me more compassion for other leaders too. Because sometimes you see other leaders and they're getting slack from every direction, and you're just like, that person is
taught them how to be a leader, right? Like, how often do we get training in leadership? I mean, as entrepreneurs, we kind of jump in, and then hopefully we're filling in the gaps, whether it's being a member of EO and taking opportunities there, or it's other experiences, executive education, reading books, podcasts, all that. You have to keep growing to stay in front of the business, but I think not every entrepreneur does. And I think that's where people get stuck, and that's when leaders become sour and folks don't want to follow those leaders. I think it's also understanding what people are looking for. And so for a long time as an employer, I've always wanted to, keep people and make them happy and keep them for a long time, and then feel really awful when they left. Like, I thought I did everything I could to help you and make you enjoy this and have professional development opportunities, all that stuff. And I've come to accept that my role isn't to keep them forever. My role is to help people have a really wonderful employment experience for as long as they're with us. And if I can help them build on that, where they feel like work is a good, safe, healthy place to be and they can grow, at some point it's healthy to leave the nest, and that's okay. The expectation is not to stay forever, but I've also had employees come through, and I've interviewed people who have left such toxic, difficult work experiences that have broken them down as human beings and made it hard for them to go into new work environment.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to be that kind of employer. I want to be an employer where they have a positive experience. They leave feeling good about the time that they had, the investment they made, and what they received for it. Monetarily, professional development, relationships, all of those things. And it's okay to move on. But I think as employers, as bosses, as leaders, we have a really important opportunity and responsibility to take care of people and to do what we can to make their experience a positive one.
It's the leadership book I would love to read.
Well, maybe that's the one I need to write. That's it. So check that out in a couple of years. It's on its way. Yeah, I think there's so much, and I work in a human service sector, right? We work with people. We're therapists. It's a therapy organization. Hiring administrators, you were talking about the transactional piece. Transactional doesn't go well in our environment. If you're a transactional or a possessive office manager, it's not going to go well, right? We need to make sure that we have people who can see people first and understand that when somebody calls us, they're calling because they have a deep need. Otherwise, they wouldn't be calling us, right? They're looking for therapy for themselves or their loved one for a reason. And so having a really compassionate, understanding sensitivity is important for all of our employees, no matter what their role is, no matter what their position.
Yeah. I mean, what gets in the way for time and patience get in the way for a lot of people, because so many of us are, I don't even want to use the word overworked, just over everything, right? We have infinite options, we have infinite ambitions, we have infinite everything. And there's so much stuff on all of our plates that to slow down and just have a conversation. Like even in this conversation, my mind's going, well, I want to ask that and I want to think about that. And it's just, as opposed to just kind of being in that moment and just having the exchange, it's so hard in that moment. You have one person on hold and a new person who called, and the phone is ringing again on a third line. And now you got to find the time and space to be compassionate and say, tell me why you're calling. You know what I mean? Really listen. So that's just a very, very hard thing to do. And that's just one example.
Most of us are not working in emergency rooms. And so at one point,
it feels like it though, doesn't it?
I know. I was talking to an employee and we were having a conversation. We were in the middle of something. The phone started ringing. And I remember saying, it's not an emergency room. No one is going to die. It's okay. Let's just keep having this conversation. And we ended up putting it on a Post-it note and putting it on the phones because it was a moment for us in recognizing that the conversation is important, right? The conversation is important. And there are lots of things that we can do to help facilitate that.
What a great phrasing for a company value. None of us work in an emergency room. Like, just remember that and offer.
Yeah. And I think it brings forward the personal value of interaction, of being on purpose. We say our common purpose is to create opportunities and moments of shared joy. And we do that in all kinds of ways. We do that in music, but we can also do that in a telephone call. We can also do that in greeting a family or a staff member who's bringing a client in for a session. There are lots of ways we can create moments of shared joy. And who doesn't need more of that?
Yeah. I always enjoyed company visions that were more about expansion than they were about attainment, right? So when somebody describes a vision, oh yeah, and we'll get there in 10 years, it's like, what can I do now that lets me embody my vision and expand it over time, as opposed to have to try to reach it as if it's outside of the current situation. It sounds like you guys are doing that in ways small and big with everything you do.
One of the phrases in our vision is about serving as beacons of light. And I think that's one of those things that we can do that every day. That's something that we can work towards and we can achieve and attain on a daily basis. So yeah, I think that's opportunities to call people to be bigger, to be part of something bigger, to think of themselves as bigger, as capable, as competent. Because sometimes our worlds remind us and make us think we're not. And the truth is, as human beings, we are all competent and capable, and connection can help with that.
I think maybe that's the greater truth that we unpacked here. So
yes,
Meredith, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciated your time today. It's been a joy to speak with you. And as always, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, Stavros. This was awesome. Thanks for inviting me to be part of it.
Thanks for joining us today, and see you next time on Wednesdays Off. Thank you for listening to Wednesdays Off. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're interested in building a life and business with more freedom, intention, and community, visit routinerebel.com to learn more. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo and keep building your version of Wednesdays Off.